We're doing a bit of a refurbishment on this FV432 behind me. As you can see, we've pretty much taken everything off the driver's side. 07 Alpha doesn't get used a huge amount. She's one of our kind of spares, and so because of that she hasn't actually been down for a winter check for about 2 years. Now we brought her down because we thought we really wanted just to get all these running gears looking nice. You can see these are ones that we did a couple days ago. You can see she's looking nice, although she does still obviously need painting because I think it's a very interesting camouflage. And now what we're working on is this side today. You can already see that we've taken off the tracks, we've taken all the road wheels off, and the two lads are currently working on the GSRs at the minute. You can see this is the track that we took off 07, and you can see the pads are just not in nice condition. So we thought, because we had to change the whole track anyway, we thought while we were doing that, we could obviously do all the road wheels and do all the GSRs and everything else. Just makes it a lot easier when you haven't got to be fighting with the track.
Just basically straightening this bit, so when it goes on it makes a nice seal on it. Then clean it up, grease it up, put it back on the shaft. Beautiful. Grease the shaft.
What did you just say?
Grease the shaft. And there we go.
What hole are you looking at?
So this here, so the split pin will go through that. It'll go through onto the nut and it secures it in place.
Now we're just going to be fitting the split pin to this. He's just quickly straightening it out just so it actually will fit. And as G said earlier, it's got to fit through that hole and through the nut. And it pretty much just helps hold the nut on, just to stop it coming loose as the vehicle's moving along. Because you can imagine if that nut came off and then the GSR pops off, it's not going to be the best. As you can see, the two GSRs are now pretty much fitted. And just to give you guys an idea of what they actually do, they pretty much, as the track goes round, they just hold it up so that it doesn't sag onto the road wheels and just sort of keeps it in line.
That's how we tension the track. Basically, you put grease in that ram there, pushes that out, pushes that back, and that will tension the track. But these things are notorious for seizing up. So while we've got it all to pieces, we'll make sure it's all moving nice and sweetly.
What are you doing there?
Okay, we're greasing up this. This is the shaft that it usually sticks on. So plenty of grease, that comes up into here, so that works fine. And as you can see, it's starting to come out, so we know that it's through. So we're just going to get the track back on.
Now they've been fitted, just put a little bit of grease into them, make sure they're okay. And Squeak's still struggling with getting this one in. Although it looks like you've done it this time, now he's just got to bend it over. You're having fun?
Oh yeah, loving it.
Living the dream.
These hubs that run along here do have to have a bit of oil in them. So you can see we've already loosened these off. And that's where the oil's got to go, just to keep everything lubricated, which is what G's doing now. Is it taking quite a lot of oil, or is it?
It's taking a fair bit. Got to make sure the level's spot on. Do it back up, and then she's all good.
A little bit stiff, that one is. There's definitely oil in that one. Quite full actually. So luckily it shouldn't need that much, although it might be worth emptying it possibly. The nut that holds on the GSR obviously does have a little cover, and it's quite a little fiddly one. Before we fit the road wheels, we're just going to get the pressure washer out and give it a quick clean. Just makes it a lot easier. As you can see, trying to get behind where the sprockets would be in the road wheels, yeah, it's a bit of a pain when they're on. Because it's been absolutely freezing here the last few weeks, the pressure washer is currently being stored under all of these, just to try and keep it, well, a little bit warmer. Jesus Christ, there's actually a lot. There it is. So I'll get it out now and then we'll give it a quick pressure wash. Do just need to clear a few little things. As you can see, we have been stripping this Rolls-Royce K60 engine for parts. There's not very many good parts on it, but we are getting a few bits. So we'll clear a few of these things out of the way and then we'll get the pressure washer out. Just gotta let it bleed up a bit. And while we were giving her a bit of a clean, we noticed that one of the elephant's feet, the one that was just here, was a little bit iffy. So we are going to quickly swap that over. And this is the sprocket that we're going to be putting back on. You can see it's hardly being used. You can see it has been used a little bit, but those teeth are pretty much perfect. But we're just going to slide that back onto there now. Yeah, I'll load it. You on? Yeah. Sort of. There you go. You can imagine this thing, if you don't have somebody holding it, it just spins around, as you can see. So you have to hold it a bit tight. Now we should be using a buzz gun, but typically the battery is dead, so we've had to resort to this for this one. But it should still get it nice and tight.
And that's tight.
We're greasing this so that the sprocket carrier will slide on nice and easily.
Lovely and greasy. You can imagine this is quite heavy, so thankfully I'm not the one doing it, instead these guys are. You do have to get it lined up pretty much perfectly. The left of it towards squeak, up a bit, towards squeak again. That's it. You can see all these little teeth, you have to get them lined up pretty much. Well, you have to get them lined up perfectly.
Somewhere there. There we go. Push, push, push. There we go.
As easy as that.
Yeah.
Now he's fitting the sprocket nut, and once that's in, we've got to tighten up even more. And then in the middle, there's a sort of locking bar that connects in, just to make sure. So again, while the sprocket's moving around, the vehicle's moving, this doesn't come off. Because you can imagine if that comes off, the sprocket comes off, bringing the track, it would be quite the disaster.
Needs a big gun again.
It needs the big gun again. Now that is one very big machine. I'm not talking about squeak.
Go pressure relief on this.
What we're trying to do here is, because the locking bar, it fits in here and has a little bit that sticks out, so we've got to pretty much get that perfectly flush, which it very nearly is, just a little bit more. It may not look like it's moving, but it is ever so slightly. And that nearly looks perfect, so it might fit in, hopefully anyway. Is it there?
It needs to go just a couple of millimetres at the bottom.
Ever so close. I think there's literally what, about a mil and a half in there? Nearly. A little bit more. Give her a little knock with a hammer. Look at that. Perfectly snug. And now here are the wheels that we're going to be replacing. You can see these are the wheels that were on it, which we took off yesterday. And these are the much nicer ones that we're going to be putting on it now. You can see these ones are pretty much mint. In total, we're going to need 12 of these, because you have 2 on the rear idler and then 2 on every single station. There you go, 6 are already in place, and now we've just got to connect another 6.
So what we're doing here is just fitting a few more road wheels. So what G's doing, he's got the heavy job, is you lift them onto there, make sure the bolts are poking through. We then have to put another one on the outside here, bolt it up, just like these. These are obviously a different colour, but we're respraying the whole of this anyway, so it won't really matter.
Now, because we're going to be putting the track on, as you can see, we have jacked it up onto a load of blocks. So we've got to take it off that. We've just put in the supporting arm for the track. So the idea is when we're pulling the track over, it'll be sitting on this so it doesn't sag and get caught on everything down here. So what G's doing here now is he's just pumping this up, just that little bit, so we can get the wooden blocks out. Because this is quite an old jack, it takes ages to go down. There you go, and the same on this side, lower it down. And there we go. Quick, clean. Now it's time for the track. And now what we're going to do is connect the 432 onto this A-frame and obviously the tractor, pull it forwards, bring in the track that we made up yesterday, which does need a bit of a clean. We're going to then drag that out so this 4.3 can then drive onto it. We'll then pick up the track, hook it over, and hopefully connect it at the front. Trying to do this with one hand is not the easiest, especially when I'm tightening up. G putting it on that side. I should really put my phone down. There we go. There we go. Now to hook it on. Now what we're doing is just using the mat bro to pull the track into place. Now you do have to be quite careful not to bend the track, but thankfully we've never really had that sort of issue. The track does usually stay relatively nice and straight. So now the track is in place, we're going to be pushing the 432 down it, so then we can bring the track around the back end and hook it up at the front. Look at that, G, you're strong, you're pushing a 432. Can you keep going, he says? No, that's it. So what we've done now is just hooked on using the track pin and the towing rope. We've lifted it over itself, and the idea is, hopefully, this sort of teeth bit is going to slot in perfectly into the rear idler. And then the tractor's going to be pulling the towing rope so it'll hook over all of them. There we go, just like that. And now what G's doing, he's just watching it as it goes along, just to make sure it also slides into the GSRs as well. And that's slotted over the 2 GSRs. And this is where that pole comes into use. You can see the track is just sitting on it. It just makes it that little bit easier to get around. Now we're just gonna pull it this last little bit, take the slack out of the track at the back. Now the brakes are on and the chock is in. We're going to be lifting this around, and then hopefully that should be easy enough now to connect. It's time for some good old-fashioned track bashing, if this pin will ever come out. No, it's going to be need knocking through from the other side. There you go. So a little bit I just didn't show you is I just had to hop in and drive it forwards a little bit so that we could actually get the track clamps on, because a lot of the well, the kind of leftover track, the slack of the track was just sitting here at the back. So by pulling it forwards, we're just pulling that around so that we can then connect the two pieces of track together. Now grab a spare pin, one that's greased up a little bit, and then once G's got these two all the way together, we're then pretty much just going to be able to slide it in. Now any of you that have ever done track bashing before, I'm sure you remember how fun it is, but at least we're doing it in the relative dry, at least it's not that muddy. Whereas I can imagine some of these guys, especially in World War II or out in the field, would have had to do this in feet of mud, which would not make it fun. Now we're just going to give it a little gentle tap. You don't want to hit it too hard in case you mess up the threads on the other side. But to be fair, it seems to be going in quite nice. Because the pin is a hexagon, you do have to move it around a little bit just to make sure all the parts of the track slide in properly. And then once it's all lined up, then you can give it a bit more of a hit. Just like that. Then all that's left is taking off the track clamps, putting the nut on the other side. We'll then put a little bit of grease on to make sure the track is nice and tight. And then we'll take her for a little bit of a spin just to make sure she's all looking good. And now just before we start driving her off, we're going to give her a little bit of grease. And once she's greased up, we can then take that bar out. It's going up slowly, but you can probably hear that the battery's nearly dead. But it's passed the fist test, so it's about right. Can still do with a little bit more, but we'll put a bit more in later on. So G, let's take her for a spin. So there you go, overall not too bad of a job today. All we've got to do now is give her a bit of a wash, and then we'll be taking her into the workshop to be painted and have the rest of the stuff done to her. But that is how you completely change your running gear on the FV432. Hope you did enjoy the video. If you have, please do like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.